death, taxes, and the Jets being able to rush the quarterback. Last week, with just 3 defensive linemen, the Jets were able to amass the following statistics: 12 pressures, 3 sacks, 5 additional quarterback hits, and 5 hurries of the passer. Quinnen Williams is what we thought Marcel Darius was going to be. The Bills are going to have to find an answer for that. The benefit to this is that if you can force the Jets to commit extra resources to the pass rush, you will open up the secondary for Josh Allen to find outlets for the passing. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bill Season Ticket Holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And we're here with your Week 2 preview, the Buffalo Bills at the New York Jets. Now, before we get into it, got a couple things I want to say. First of all, make sure, if you're out there and you're interested in competition cooking, or if you just have ever stood around in your backyard, maybe you cook a mean steak, all your friends and family tell you so, your wife says, no, I'm not going to order that because my husband does it better. If you're in that group and you live in the Western New York area, make sure you check out the Grills Mafia steak competition taking place on October 18th. Registration it's at Palmer's in Rochester. Palmer's Direct to You Market out in Rochester. $1,000 prize for the grand champion. It's a cook-off, backyard style, which means there is no heavy-handed rubric on how you cook it, what you season it with, whether it's marinated, unmarinated. It's just show up, cook something. A bunch of blind judges do a blind draw. They judge it. It's ribeyes, chicken wings, and a pumpkin dessert with $1,000 cash prize to the overall grand champion, plus a bunch of other prizes and add-ins. Reed Ferguson himself is going to be there doing the award presentation. It's all to go sell it for the Veterans Outreach Center. Okay, all of the proceeds go to benefit that, other than the prize money. And ultimately, Palmer's Direct to You Market is really great for partnering with us over at Q42 on this. If you want more information on the competition itself, go to Q42BBQ.com. And as far as Palmer's goes, guys, yes, they sponsor the barbecue company and our tailgate. And for those of you who made it out to the home opener, all the meats you had came direct from Palmer's. But I'll tell you what, they're more than just, like Chris, that's what I keep trying to tell people. They're not just a store, right? You can go buy meat.
They're family.
Anywhere. They're not family, but they're a part of the Rochester community. I mean, over there on Jefferson Road, the Direct to You Market is one of Rochester's longest owned and really the oldest family-owned business in Rochester. Okay, they're up there as one of the oldest, and they've really made themselves a part of the community, kind of a fabric of it, just with all the community service that they do and all the other events that they throw and that they're a part of, whether it's their veterans charities or other regional and local charitable endeavors. They're in that way, they're a great partner for us with our Grills Mafia and the stuff that we try to do over there to also help. As you know, Reed Ferguson, big fan of the veterans. It's where I go. I get all my fresh chorizo there. If you're also into elk, a lot of exotic meats, Chris. Also, oxtails. Stuff like that. Stuff you can't probably, I would bet most of you living in the Western New York area can't find the selection you get at your local butcher that you can find at Palmer's. Premium products, affordable prices. Go check it out. It's Palmer's Direct to You Market on Jefferson Road in Rochester, New York. And while you're there, stock up on your Q42 products. So with that, Chris, I want to launch into the Week 2 preview for the New York Jets. The time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard. The place, Meadowlands, New Jersey. The weather, this is what's funny. Antoine Staley of the New York Daily News tweeted out last week that for what seems like the 7th, I think he said it was the 7th or 8th consecutive year at the Jets home opener, it rained. It's rained almost every Jets home opener for the last 6 or 7 years.
As it should.
It's going to be 80 and partly cloudy this week. Gorgeous weather. Now, I mean, it's hard to imagine a place like New Jersey. When I think about New Jersey, what imagery comes to mind?
The Bon Jovi album, New Jersey.
When you think of, I don't know why, but for some reason in my head, I always just picture New Jersey as overcast. People go, oh, the shore. That might be the only place the sun actually shines in that state. I'm convinced of it. Everything else, I just picture like, do you remember the book, The Lorax?
No.
Of course you don't. When they fantasize about what a world without trees would look like, and it just looks like it's like cloudy and overcast perpetually, just a swamp with smokestacks sticking out of it. That's what I picture in my head whenever anybody brings up New Jersey. Allegedly, it won't look like that on Sunday while the Bills are there, which I think bodes well. And the line is the Bills are 7.5 point favorites. Given what we saw from the Jets this past weekend, at least even just from a betting perspective, do you think it's a little aggressive?
Yeah, I'd go Jets to cover. I wouldn't, if I'm betting an NFL game, I'm generally never going to touch something that's over a touchdown. And if I do, I take the underdog to cover in that situation. And we do have Nance and Romo on the call, which is interesting. I figured they would get some other game. Bills Jets isn't exactly must-see TV. And then I'll throw up the 506 Sports map so you guys can see that. I'm going to guess. This will be fun while the map is on screen right now. Me guessing at what it looks like. Probably all of New York, New Jersey, and parts of Wyoming get the game would be my guess.
That's probably fair because I feel like there's got to be more compelling matchups out there. But we do get Nance and Romo, which means
which means the better game is the 425 is on Fox. So that's why Nance and Romo are at 1.
So the Buffalo Bills were the only team in the AFC East to post a victory in week 1. And they had to fight like hell to get there. It's almost mathematically inexplicable that they did. And so now they're going up against a team that probably could have and maybe should have had a victory, and probably could have and should have been in the winners column with them this week in the New York Jets. And here to talk to us about it, Mr. Scott Mason from Play Like a Jet. Scott, I have missed you, sir. How you been?
Likewise, Drew. I was just saying I missed you. Not so much Chris. I kid. No, seriously, it's good to be back talking to you guys. It was tough. I would text you during the summer, and then maybe I'd hear back like a month and a half later if I was lucky. So it's good to finally get a chance to actually have a conversation.
Yeah, it's been one of those football off seasons for us over here. Definitely a lot of balls up in the air, but I'm happy we can get back together again and kind of pick this back up. And I feel like it comes at a great time because one of the biggest things about the Jets heading into this year was that you kind of were at a crossroads of, okay, we've flipped this thing on its head again. We, from the front office to the on the field coaching staff to half of the players involved in the game, we've shuffled the deck again. And this time we've gone a little bit different direction than what we've done in the past. And you end up with an Aaron Glenn on the sideline as head coach. You end up with a Justin Fields at quarterback. And you say to yourself, okay, if you're just a snarky outsider, you look at this and go, there's no way anything positive can come from this. First-time head coach, a failed quarterback, a quarterback 2 different teams didn't want to retain. How could this go well? And then you fast forward to my shock and surprise to watch that box score. And then I ended up just watching the game from the tailgate this past Sunday, where you see them just going toe-to-toe with the Steelers, who, whether it's right or wrong, still fancy themselves as a decent football team. I want to start with Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn in his coaching debut, what were your thoughts on his performance as far as how he prepared this football team to play?
I thought for the most part, they exceeded expectations. The only area where they were really bad, and we can talk about it, is the pass coverage. Their pass coverage was brutal. And then obviously that big mistake by Xavier Gibson that cost them in a major way in the fourth quarter. But I thought for the most part, Aaron Glenn was well prepared. He managed the game properly. I was really impressed with Tanner Engstrand, the new offensive coordinator. Steve Wilkes, he's an old hand. You know what you're getting from him. There were disappointing moments for the defense, and they really let the offense down, which is certainly not something I was expecting to say to you when I knew we were going to be having this conversation.
No, and we're going to get into some of the specificity of it, but on the whole, and then maybe even in the aftermath, because I always feel like that's one of the things where, as you're watching this back and forth affair with the Steelers, and you're like, okay, it seems like, because there were Jets teams in the past that would have scored a few times and then just completely unraveled and let this one get away from them. And while the game didn't go their way, it had the feeling, watching it, of a team that from one drive to the next, even though mistakes were made, even though things didn't consistently go the Jets' way, they seemed more composed than they ever did in the past. And then in the aftermath, what you didn't get was a bunch of you didn't get a bunch of coach speak, and you didn't get a lot of hyperbole from Aaron Glenn. And I feel like this is a much more mature football organization, at least in terms of what you're seeing on the field and the way they prepare and even the way they deal with the aftermath of that. I think that the team that we watched play kind of reflects his composure to a certain degree. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I said, they look well prepared, and there were some penalties. Some of them were bad. I mean, the John Simpson one, I can't get too mad. It was at the end of the half, and he was trying to defend his quarterback. But for the most part, you didn't see as many pre-snap penalties, which to me always shows a lack of focus and a lack of preparation. And you're right. I think that they reflected what the coaching staff, particularly Aaron Glenn, has been preaching throughout the offseason and what he's really been preaching since the day that he got here in his introductory presser. I think what you're looking at with Aaron Glenn, too, is there are elements to everything he does where you can see parts of all the different mentors that he's had over the years, whether that's Sean Payton, whether that's Dan Campbell, whether that's Bill Belichick, or most especially Bill Parcells. You see it a lot. There are a lot of ways that he manages the game, or little motivational tricks that he pulls, the way he even talks in the pressers, as you said. So part of why I was so bullish on Aaron Glenn going into the coaching search and why I was happy that they hired him is because he's learned from these guys, and it seems like he's taken a lot of the best lessons from all of them. Now, it doesn't guarantee anything, but I think when you're looking at somebody who's never been a head coach before, you want the guy that checks the most possible boxes, and I think he does that for the most part. Now, again, doesn't guarantee that in the end he's going to be a successful head coach, but it does mean that he was a promising prospect. There were a lot of signs that were pointing in that direction, and so now he'll have to prove it. Game one, I think, was a nice start, even though they did obviously lose the game.
Well, and it's also, I guess, when you're just watching the score, you get some sticker shock at first, because I'll tell you what, as a guy who understands gambling and doesn't necessarily do it anymore, if I had to wager money on that game, there's no way in hell I would have bet the over. That's for sure. But we ended up there. Right. But also then you look at some of the other metrics and some of the places, like, because there's a story within that when you look at the statistics. The Jets offensive line, especially with there's some guys in the league who when bad things happen to them, I'm a bad person, so I'll celebrate it and go, look at that. And then there's some guys who you see something happen to and you just shake your head because you're like, man, what does this guy have to do to catch a break? And I feel like Jets guard Elijah Vera Tucker is very much one of those types of players where when the news breaks in the middle of an afternoon that, hey, he got hurt at practice this morning and they think it's a significant injury and it turns out he tore his tricep and his season's over. And you go, okay, this is a Jets offensive line that regularly lets them down, that regularly just cannot hold its own. And they've invested a lot recently, but we've heard that before, right? Like we've heard them, hey, they went out and got Morgan Moses and they drafted Mekhi Becton and they spent draft capital and they spent money and they did all these things that were supposed to make the offensive line better. And it never comes to fruition. This is a game where, with Olafashanu, if I'm hopefully not butchering his last name, and Membu, their first round pick from this year. And you mix him in with last year's free agent acquisitions and some of the other names that they've shuffled around. And they come out here in week one and put up one of the best pass block win rates as a unit in the entire NFL. Do you know that? They were ninth best in the entire league in pass block win rate as an offensive line. I don't think any quarterback who started for the Jets for the last 7 or 8 years can say that. And the result was an offense that looked like it can be functional in the NFL. Like, yeah, there were some blown plays where the Steelers, you go, oh, that's just an individual mistake. But by and large, that offense for the first time in forever looked like it had a pulse because they were able to keep the quarterback relatively clean. What was different from this offensive line than what I've seen from Jets offensive lines past?
I mean, for starters, the players are better. I mean, there's
Sure.
no other way around that. Armand Membu is unbelievable. I mean, if you go back and look at the film on him, he was ragdolling TJ Watt all day. For a guy making his first NFL start, that is remarkable. And let's remember, we're talking about a Steelers defense that has some heavy hitters back there. Highsmith and Watt, and even Cam Hayward, who's 1,000 years old. He's still effective. So this is a team that is not a joke on defense, and the Jet offensive line held up really well. Joe Tippmann was outstanding at guard in this game. The two tackles were really good. Membu, oh my goodness, he had, I think, 26. There were 26 dropbacks for Fields, and Membu kept him clean on every single one. There were no pressures.
Chris, imagine if I told you a rookie tackle could go up against TJ Watt and not allow a single quarterback pressure or hurry.
Sounds like Mekhi Becton.
Yeah, more like sounds like what Mekhi Becton was supposed to be. He's the Mekhi Becton you guys were expecting a few years ago.
Right. And the thing about it is that everything flows from that O-line. So Justin Fields had cleaner pockets than anything you've seen. And so that obviously made his job easier. Breece Hall had wide open running lanes. So that obviously made his job easier. And that's not to downplay what these guys both did, because Fields, this was as good as I've seen Fields play. And, you know, we'll get into this more, I'm sure. But I said this to a friend of mine, and you and I have talked about this when it comes to Justin Fields. The reason why the Jets did this with Fields is not because they're 100% confident that they're going to be able to unlock something that no other team that he's been on has been able to unlock. But what they went into this thinking was, we think there's a chance that we can unlock it. If we do, we've got a 26-year-old franchise quarterback. If we don't, we go into the draft next year and draft somebody else. But at least he's got the tools and he's young enough where, hey, we've seen it before. Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, whatever, right? And when you see this performance by Justin Fields, where you knew he was going to be able to use his legs effectively, but you weren't expecting him to be able to do this with his arm. He was making some fantastic throws, tight window throws. He was making really good decisions, very smart with the football, no turnovers. So if he can play like this, that was the vision. The vision was, if you can get the best of Justin Fields, all of a sudden the trajectory changes for this team, not only for this year, but going forward. Now, look, it's one game, so we can't overreact. But I think what the one game did show you is this is what could be possible. Whether or not it actually winds up playing out this way throughout the season is a different story. But you now see that there's an actual light at the end of the tunnel, possibly.
Well, one of the things that stood out to me was, we just got done singing the praises of your offensive line and what a good job they did in terms of keeping him clean. But coming into this game against the Bills, this is a team that, Chris, you can probably agree with this. We had some difficulty really getting to, we made some plays when it came to rushing the passer. Unfortunately, you also saw multiple plays against the Ravens where the pursuit of the quarterback ended up biting you in the ass. And it was either a run for a first down, or worse, it exposed you at that second level of the defense. And when I look at the passer chart for Justin Fields out of this game, it kind of tells the story of a quarterback who maybe felt the most comfortable he's felt in years when he was asked to drop back and throw the football. Because what I'm seeing here is that, beyond 10 yards, like 10 yards downfield plus is generally speaking where your better quarterbacks are making plays. They're consistent with the ball. That's really where you make your flash plays. And it's where, like he had a 33-yard touchdown pass, Justin Fields did. His completion percentage beyond 10 yards in this game was unreal.
Right.
And a lot of it was just having the confidence to stand there and wait for his guys to separate to a point where he felt they were comfortable. You look back at the offensive lines he was handed and just kind of the mixed bag of opportunities he got with the Steelers. I think if he can get that level of support, it's interesting to see, or at least think about what he could be as a passer. I I mean, because I know that the Steelers also have some disarray in their secondary. And I think right now every team in the AFC has some level of that. And that's why weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, everybody uses the phrase like, oh, the first couple weeks are a liar. They can be. But also, Chris, we talk about trying to catch the Patriots early in a year. Like you'd see them go 500 over the first 4 weeks of a season.
Yep.
Where they'd win 2 or they'd lose 1. They'd lose it. Remember when they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah. That's where you called the radio station.
I did. I called the radio station locally and was shoveling dirt on the grave of the Patriots. And they proceeded to go on like an 8-game winning streak. Because every team is still to a certain degree trying to figure out what they are, especially if you have new faces in your secondary, which the Steelers definitely do, especially with the offseason trade of Minka Fitzpatrick and a lot of the changes they made. Good for the Jets for being able to take advantage of it. And I think that the protection, just the composure of the quarterback and the protection he got really kind of tell the story of that. The other thing that I did notice is Breece Hall on the runs that I was watching in between cooking and pulling stuff out of the smoker at the tailgate, he looked decisive for the first time. We know he's talented. We all watched his draft tape back when the Bills thought he might be a prospect we could land. We all loved the fact that he's got this easy speed where there was times where he was flying with the ball in his hands and it didn't look like he was really sprinting. He was just kind of running and it just seemed to come so naturally to him. And then last season, and the injury probably has something to do with that, you saw a much more hesitant player. And I think he missed a lot of opportunities. He misread a lot of holes. He had a very down year. And then comes into this game and looks nothing like the player we saw last season. And it was that decisiveness that really keyed his day. And I think helped offset some of the pressure that the Steelers probably wanted to put on your quarterback.
Yeah, without a doubt. I actually just said this. I recorded a show with my friend Robbie Sabo from Jets X Factor. We were going over the All 22. He did some great breakdowns. And what we were saying is that this is the best Breece Hall has looked since that game that basically ended Bill Belichick's tenure in New England, where Breece Hall was a one-man show and the Jets coaching staff can't do math because they thought that he had 1,000 yards on the season and he wound up having 994, which is hilarious.
Oh, no.
That was tremendous. I remember seeing that and going, oh, my God. But no, he was really good. Like the thing about it is he wasn't seeing holes and he wasn't getting yards after contact last year. There was a big problem. Our mutual friend Joe Blewett used to talk about it a lot in his film reviews. But you know what? That wasn't an issue. Now, granted, as I said, the offensive line being able to block as well as they did certainly helped a lot. But Breece Hall looked much better. He looked a lot more like the guy that everybody was so excited about his rookie season in this particular game. And it's funny when you going back to Justin Fields for a second. I know that the Bills were in the same spot when Josh Allen came to town in terms of, and I'm not, before anybody jumps down my throat, I'm in no way trying to say that Justin Fields is even in the same universe as Josh Allen in any way. What I'm saying is Bills fans had never seen a quarterback really that was this level of dual threat potentially. A guy that I always say there are guys that can buy time with their legs, and then there are guys that can make real plays with their legs. And Fields is a guy that can make real plays with his legs. The Jets have never had anybody like that. That doesn't mean that the other guys that they had were bad. It just means he's a different style of quarterback than anything they've had. Same thing with the Bills. I guess you could say Tyrod a little bit, but not really. Tyrod wasn't making the type of home run plays with his legs. He could get you a first down or something like that, but he wasn't as much of a dual threat as what we've seen with Josh Allen, obviously. And it reminds me a little bit of what Aaron Glenn said when he was talking about why he had such a belief in Justin Fields. And I think part of what sold Justin Fields on coming here, as opposed to going to the Steelers, was the fact that Aaron Glenn had a plan for him and a real belief that he could succeed. And Aaron Glenn said, what we're going to do is we're going to let Justin Fields play quarterback for the first time in his NFL career. And what I think he meant by that is there was an old episode of Law and Order. It was in the first season. And two of the characters that were pretty iconic in the early years, Paul Robinette, who's played by Richard Brooks, and Michael Moriarty played Ben Stone. And at the end of the episode, it was an episode that heavily involved race. he said to him, "Do you?" Robinette said to Stone, "Do you think that I'm a sellout because I helped the law and wasn't on the side of the black community or whatever?" And he says, "Well, you got to ask yourself a question: are you a lawyer who's black or a black lawyer?" And it's kind of like that with Fields. I feel like in the NFL to this point, he's mostly been treated as a runner who plays quarterback as opposed to a quarterback who can run. And I think that's what Aaron Glenn saw him as. He saw him as a quarterback who can run. And you saw him make plays with his legs, but he had 48 yards and 2 touchdowns. One of them obviously was a sneak and all of that. But I think that's what it was. They were calling this game as though Justin Fields was a quarterback who can make plays with his legs as opposed to a guy that makes plays with his legs who occasionally throws the ball.
No, that's spot on. I think that's great. And, it's really when you dig into the figures, the numbers show that. The numbers show, like, one of the things we're going to talk about in our keys to victory is just this idea that he had a better passer rating when he was under pressure, as most quarterbacks do. You see a dip in his, just in his performance and his statistical output. But when he was blitzed, he saw a sizable uptick in what he was able to produce, which means if you made his life easier for him and his offensive line could pick it up a little bit, he's athletic enough to navigate a pocket, and the Steelers defense at the secondary level was giving it to him. They're saying, look, we're going to sacrifice an extra guy to throw it at you. Someone's going to come open. And between your quarterback and your offensive coordinator, they did a phenomenal job picking that up. And it's something that the Bills are going to have to be wary of. That this guy isn't just going to panic if you put pressure in his face. He can actually throw the ball really well if he's under duress, but has time. And it's probably, like, I'm very interested to see how Bobby Babich and his group are going to approach that aspect of the 2025 New York Jets. Now, on the other side of the football, the secondary for the Jets. So we know that we know that you've got Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner is a mainstay. He's the one thing that I know to be consistent about the New York Jets defense. And there's people who would, kind of snarkily, here we call it the whiner line, because our radio station used to do a whiner line where you could call in and just make snarky comments about the team, and they would play them during the week. And if I was doing that about Sauce Gardner, I'd be like, yeah, he's great because he's always holding. Oh, yeah, he's allowed to hold. Yeah, it's the only consistent thing about him. He's a really, really great talent. And Sunday they did something a little bit different with him. He traveled. Okay.
Yeah.
He traveled for one of the, probably, I don't want to say the first time, but one of the first times that I've noticed in his career. I think that's notable about some of the things that they're trying to do differently with the secondary this year. And I think it pays some dividends in the sense that it does allow you to match up better with an opponent. If you just say, look, we're going to move him around the formation. That way you can't just circumvent Sauce Gardner and play everyone else. The problem, though, it seems like with the Jets secondary ahead of this Bills game is everybody else. Everybody else had themselves a hell of a time on Sunday. Brandon Stevens and Michael Carter probably got the worst of it. Talk to me a little bit about those two and what you thought about their performances on Sunday.
Tony Adams was terrible too, so let's not leave him out.
I like how you can't help it because you're petty like us. You're like, whoa. I was going to be nice and not bring up the safety room. You were like, nope, absolutely. If we're putting two guys in the secondary in a barrel, that guy better get in there too.
Part of that report last year about Woody Johnson and Brick Johnson and all that was that Woody told the coaching staff he wanted Tony Adams benched. Maybe Woody was onto something is all I'm saying. Maybe they should have listened to Woody on that one. But what I'll say with the secondary is Sauce was tremendous. And anybody who says that stuff about him holding is just whatever. You're just, like you said, you're being petty. He shadowed and traveled with DK Metcalf almost the entire game. There were a few plays that he didn't because it was his own look. And on those plays were the plays where Metcalf actually did something. The only catch that he had on Sauce Gardner, I don't even think it's fair to attribute it to Sauce. It was that crazy play where the ball bounced off of somebody and into Metcalf's arms who was laying on the ground. So I don't see how you could possibly call that something that would be Sauce's fault. But this is something he's wanted to do. Saleh and Ulbrich didn't believe in it. But Aaron Glenn, it's kind of funny, right? I remember the story, and Glenn told this story, and Bill Parcells remembered it well. when they would practice, when Aaron Glenn was on the Jets under Bill Parcells, whenever there was a really good receiver that the Jets were going to be going up against, so let's say Terry Glenn, we all remember him, Parcells would say to him, I'm going to give you some safety help over the top. Terry Glenn's pretty tough. And Aaron Glenn would be like, I don't need safety help. I can take him. And he said, I don't know. I don't think you can. It's tough. I don't know if anybody can take him one-on-one. He's like, Coach, I could take him one-on-one. And then Parcells would be like, all right, I'll tell you what. I'll give you a chance to prove yourself in practice, right? And so Aaron Glenn would go out there like a madman in practice looking to prove himself. And the whole point was Parcells was pushing his buttons, getting him to be the best version of himself, which he was. And then he would go out there and go one-on-one with these guys. Sauce, I think there's a lot of that there too. I think he is constantly striving to be the very best, and he was as good as anybody again on the field. The rest of the pass defense is a problem. Look, when the Jets signed Brandon Stevens, a lot of us were confused because he's widely been considered the weak link of that Ravens pass defense.
I was going to say,
the last few years.
I was going to say, we do shows with Ken McCusick, who from Film Study Ravens.
Sure.
And he talked ad nauseum last year about how Brandon Stevens was a liability and how he didn't understand why they wouldn't give Nate Wiggins more run and why they kept benching Wiggins for Stevens when there's nothing on film and there's nothing statistically that would point to that being a wise decision. And so then this year, when the Jets signed him with the departure of DJ Reed, it was curious because having a really good front seven can only get you so far. You still have to have some talent on the back end of a defense in order to support it. And I think that didn't do you guys a lot of favors in terms of getting after a very aged quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, is that there seemed to have been just a lot of opportunities given by that secondary. And Brandon Stevens might have been the worst. I mean, he was the most highly targeted cornerback on your team, gave up almost every ball thrown his way. It doesn't look good, right?
Well, yeah, and Ken, who's awesome, he's been on my show a bunch too. I love talking to him. He's so funny too because whenever I talk to him, he goes, "All right, just tell me what you need," and I'll be like, "All right, I want to talk about this, this, and this." He'll be like, "Yep, all right, just throw it at me." And the way he describes it is he likes to approach it like he's an expert witness in court, which always makes me laugh. But he does a great job. I love talking to him about it. He said the same thing, like Brandon Stevens, he can get you tight coverage, but he doesn't get his head around. He can't locate the ball. And so these quarterbacks figure it out and they throw over the back shoulder. And that's essentially what Rodgers was doing. He was killing him the whole time. It was a strange signing. We all said, look, we're happy about Aaron Glenn. We're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he and Steve Wilkes see something that we don't see, right? Mm-hmm. But look, it's only 1 week, so maybe he turns this around. And Aaron Glenn was supportive of him in his midweek press conference. But look, the Jets drafted Azari Thomas, the corner out of Florida State, in the 3rd round, who a lot of people thought was a first-round caliber talent who slipped. If this keeps up, and at safety, I talked about Tony Adams. The Jets drafted Malachi Moore, who they're very high on, the All-American, and you know him well, Drew, as an Alabama fan.
Yep.
He's a guy that's sitting around there. I wouldn't be shocked if those guys wind up in the pass defense because, look, one thing that Aaron Glenn has stressed over and over again, and we're going to see if the rubber meets the road here on this, if you make mistakes that cost the team, you are not going to play. He's not going to, or this is what he said at least, that you are not going to be on the field if you are making plays that are costing the team. So Stevens was costing the team. Adams is costing the team. Michael Carter II had a terrible game. I will give him some leeway, however, because he's been very good. So I'm just going to chalk this up to a bad game for him. But if the Jets secondary plays like that for any stretch, it's going to be very tough for them because, look, they scored 32 points. And to be fair, it did take a drop Brandon Stevens interception. It did take that weird DK Metcalf play that I said before. It did take a terribly timed Xavier Gibson fumble on a return. And it did take a Chris Boswell 60-yard field goal. All of that for the Steelers to win, even with everything I said. But if the pass defense is this bad against the better quarterbacks in the league, like Rodgers was fine. He took advantage of what was given to him. But against Josh Allen, against Lamar Jackson, against Joe Burrow, guys like that, it's going to be, you can't win games in the NFL with that level of pass defense in the year 2025.
I mean, if there's anything that maybe bodes well for the New York Jets, the fact that our defense just took a thrashing of its own. I mean, it was ugly, not just in the sense that, hey, Lamar Jackson's a superstar in his own right, and they run this, really powerful rushing attack. And so there was a lot of ugly miscommunication. There's a lot for our defense to clean up, and that happens anytime you give up 40 points. So with that in mind, I think that this is kind of two teams who have a lot to clean up ahead of this game. And the outcome is going to be largely dictated by who cleans it up the fastest. Now, I think there's a track record that lends itself towards saying Buffalo will be that team, but it's the NFL. Nothing is guaranteed. I mean, this is for everybody who keeps saying, oh, it's good and it's the same old Jets. Those are the same old Jets that beat us week 1, 2 years ago with Zach Wilson and a game plan that had to be thrown out the window because Aaron Rodgers got injured 4 plays into the game. We lost that game. So don't talk to me as if it can't happen.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the thing I will say, too, is, as I said, what we saw from the Jets was just a 1-week performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, if they can play anything like that, if the O-line can do that, if Fields can play that way, if Breece Hall can run like that, they can be competitive with anybody in the league.
We could be watching in the makings of another shootout.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but it could also be that both teams, that we're expecting that, and then we get a weird game like the game you're referencing. What was the final score of that game? Like 22-17 or something?
22-16, I believe.
Yeah, so it could be something like that too, but I will say this. I had zero expectations for this game against Buffalo before the opener against the Steelers. I'm a little more confident now that the Jets will at least be competitive in this game, whereas I thought before that it was, I thought they had a chance to be competitive, but I thought that it was going to take a ton. Now, after seeing how bad Buffalo's defense played and seeing how well the Jets offense played, again, I'm not picking the Jets to win this game necessarily, but I think there's a much better chance, or at least it appears that there's a much better chance than I originally thought that the Jets will be competitive with the Bills in this one.
It's hard not to feel good. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find your coverage of it and where they can get my appearance on your show as we talk about Know Your Foe and all that kind of stuff. Why don't you tell everybody where they can follow you on social and where they can find your work?
Excellent question, Shelton. So you can find me at PlayLikeAJet1 on Twitter. You can go to PlayLikeAJet.com. You can go to YouTube.com/PlayLikeAJet. And you can, of course, go and listen to the podcast 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Brand new episode that includes Thanksgiving, Christmas, Memorial Day, Kwanzaa, whatever it is. There will be a new episode that day. Drew will be on this week to talk about the Bills because we like to do Know Your Foe, where we look at things from the opposing team point of view so that Jets fans can get a better idea of what the Jets are up against. We've got midweek news and notes. We've got Randy Lang from NewYorkJets.com who comes on and breaks down the numbers. Robbie Sabo came on this week to talk about the film. So a lot of good stuff. Like I said, new episode every day, including Drew this week. So if you're listening to this show, I assume you like Drew. I don't know why else you would be listening to this show unless it's a hate listen. So if you want to hear more Drew, you can get more Drew this week on Play Like a Jet.
Scott Mason, Play Like a Jet on Twitter at PlayLikeAJet1, Play Like a Jet podcast on all your audio platforms. He's still doing his YouTube channels. Excellent for film stuff. He's got that going on for him, but still does not put his face out on the internet. So Play Like a Jet only on the audio apps. Drew did Know Your Foe. Go find it.
And so, guys, that brings us to the Keys to Victory, sponsored by Triple Bogey.
Wow, that's a lot of keys. Bigger the keychain, more powerful the man.
Finest Canadian lager this side of the Mason-Dixon. Chris, Keys to Victory. First one is going to be trying to find a way to mitigate the Jets' pass rush because death, taxes, and the Jets being able to rush the quarterback, some things never change. Last week, with just 3 defensive linemen, the Jets were able to amass the following statistics: 12 pressures, 3 sacks, 5 additional quarterback hits, and 5 hurries of the passer. It's pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
Will McDonald was kind of derided in the past about being just a one-trick pony. And that was kind of the book on him coming out of college, was that he was a great athlete as a pass rusher on the defensive line. He just didn't have a full-blown repertoire of pass rush moves. And Aaron Glenn, we asked our guest tonight about him and just the impact he's had as a coach. One of the first things Aaron Glenn made media waves for was the idea that he started telling people, no, Will McDonald's a really good pass rusher. And they said, oh, we're seeing all this stuff out of him. We're seeing him. He's making, we see him with spin moves, and we see him with a cross chop, and we see all these pass rush moves that we've never seen from him before. What's your secret? And Aaron Glenn laughed and goes, he's getting coached now. Someone's actually coaching this guy who's a professional. Chris, first of all, that's a hilarious takedown of the previous regime, isn't it?
100%.
He goes, hey, that first round pick you had, who nobody could figure out why he wasn't producing more. Yeah, he's actually getting coaching now. And so far, the early returns look pretty good. He was their best defensive lineman on the day. Then Jermaine Johnson, who lost all of last year to injury. Questions about, hey, is he going to come back with the same amount of juice as a pass rusher that he had? 4 pressures and a couple quarterback hits will tell you otherwise. The legend of Double J is not dead. Double J, Jeff Jarrett.
Oh, God. Yeah. The last outlaw.
And then Quinnen Williams is just Quinnen Williams, right? Quintessential. Quinnen Williams is what we thought Marcel Darius was going to be.
Question.
Yes.
Did he get his braces off?
I would love to see you ask him that question to his face. Like, hey, braces, what's up? Hey, brace face.
You still have braces on?
Do you still have braces on? Just to watch Chris get folded up into a ham hot pocket? Or would you be more of a broccoli cheddar?
Broccoli cheddar.
The Bills are going to have to find an answer for that. I know that their pass blocking is good. The benefit to this is that if you can force the Jets to commit extra resources to the pass rush, you will open up the secondary for Josh Allen to find outlets for the passing game. And that alone will pay dividends and pave the way to a victory. It's just a tall task because they are a very, very good group of pass rushers. And I look at this and I say Torrance had a good game. He's been historically pretty stout in terms of pass blocking. Connor McGovern, steady. David Edwards, okay. Decent talent in the NFL. I don't know. I look at this and I question, I see that there will be some times Josh Allen faces pressure in the A and B gap, and I'm not loving the idea of it, but that's where we are. I think if you can find a way to resolve that and make them commit those extra resources, you're going to be in good shape. As an extension of that, you have to find a way to put those second level defenders of the Jets into conflict, because they've proven that they are not a gelled unit and that really they're having a tough time seeing the ball in space. I think Joe Brady is going to have to play a lot of 11 personnel. Now, it's funny because statistically in the NFL, 12 personnel generates the higher EPA per play compared to any other offensive formation. Do you know why that is, Chris?
No.
Generally speaking, it's because it's easier to mask what it is you're doing. If you play 12 personnel with a Dalton Kincaid and a Dawson Knox out there, right, as your 2 tight ends, teams still have to try to defend the run, especially with play action mixed in. But it's devastating because you're trying to play the team straight up, and you can't, because if you try to, you still have dynamic tight ends who can catch the ball. You're also not able to support, like in a zone, you're not able to be as deep with your zone drop because you have to be ready to defend the run. And so with that, there's room for boundary wide receivers on deep crosses and in routes to kind of find holes in that. And the Bills are equipped to do so, I believe. Keon Coleman, Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore. There's a reason these guys are here. It's because they're supposed to be excelling at that and allow the Bills to operate out of 12 personnel. I think, though, because of the Jets' defensive line, you're going to have to play this game in more 11 personnel. Now, you can do that out of the pistol. You can do it out of the shotgun. There's a lot of ways you can do that. I think that you need that extra receiver on the field because I need Michael Carter and I need Brandon Stevens to not really understand what it is they're looking at. I have a perfect example from their last game as to why that's important. There was a really easy touchdown pass early on in the game that Aaron Rodgers threw to Ben Skronik. Chris, if I told you that game 2 days ago and told you he was an accountant, you would have believed me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, my buddy Ben over in accounting, Ben Skronik. Yeah, so it's not the guy's overwhelming physical talent that got him a 23-yard touchdown reception. There's a play where Michael Carter, who's their new nickelback, and he was involved in 13 games for him last year, but he only started one. And linebacker Jamian Sherwood, they just had a complete miscommunication. Carter played what he thought was a zone in a rep where everybody around him was playing man. The end result was just this massive hole in the middle of the field. And Ben Skronik caught it. It was one-on-one with the safety who missed a tackle, and the next thing you know, he's 23 yards down the field in the end zone. Now imagine those guys against Khalil Shakir in the same scenario.
Mm-hmm.
It probably comes at him a lot faster, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think that there's going to be opportunities for them to work the middle of the field against this team, but you need that extra wide receiver and that extra layer of inexperience to be on the football field in order to take advantage of it. And if they do decide to, especially after getting beat up in the middle of the field, if they decide to commit more safeties to that, that's going to create more opportunities on the outside against guys like Brandon Stevens for someone like Keon Coleman or for Josh Palmer, who had just an amazing game, who just had the two of them together down the stretch, between Coleman just having the breakout performance of his career and then Josh Palmer, who was steady but came up big in clutch moments. I think that as long as you're avoiding wherever Sauce Gardner is, you're going to be able to win over there if you can cause the right conflict in the secondary. Make them make choices. Don't make it easy on them. Make them have to think in real time. If they can do that, I think 11 personnel is the best way to support it. I have no doubt this offense can still put up points. And then on the other side of the ball, our defense has to not do the same fucking thing I just talked about. The secondary has got to be more composed. Has to be. One of the things that I hated about this game, Jets Steelers, was looking back at the passer rating. Looking back at the passer rating and just the passing statistics for what's his face there? The old Jesus. Looking back at the passing statistics for Justin Fields. It's one of the things everybody, our friends over at Bootleg Football, EJ Snyder and Brett Coleman. Brett Coleman constantly sings, even though he gets called a hater when it comes to Joe Burrow. One of the things he's gone out of his way to point out is that there are very few quarterbacks in the NFL whose passer rating stays the same, whether they're under pressure or whether they're kept clean. Now, it's rare that you see that, but it's above average when you see a guy whose passer rating when blitzed goes up compared to when he's not blitzed, or compared to when he's under pressure naturally because of a four-man rush, or when he's under pressure because of a blitz. The difference in this case couldn't be more stark. Last week against the Steelers, the Jets quarterback under pressure, 10 dropbacks, 8 attempts, 4 completions for 50 yards. Incredibly pedestrian numbers. But on downs where he saw a blitz, 11 attempts, 7 completions, 123 yards and a touchdown with no interceptions. Committing extra resources to trying to rattle that quarterback is a bad idea. Chris, he's never been known as an accurate passer. And yet the Steelers found a way to make him look great in that capacity. Probably because commitment to blitzes, right? He was blitzed on 12 of his dropbacks. That opened the door for him to be able to throw the ball and just find open receivers. And he's processing that blitz quickly, using his athleticism to kind of navigate dirty pockets the way we watched Josh Allen do and find weak spots in the resulting usually a zone defense. the Bills can't fall victim to a lot of the same mental mistakes in the secondary that we did last week against the Ravens. But also, they're going to have to find a way to heat this quarterback up and give him different looks post-snap and not have to commit resources to the blitz. I think it's a losing proposition for them this week. I think this game's going to be a lot tougher than everyone gives it credit for. And I think that history has shown us that with worse quarterback play, the Jets have been able to grind out some really close games against the Buffalo Bills, even if it's only for 3 quarters. I think the Bills have to win this game. I think it's going to be more difficult than fans are giving it credit for right now.
Well, yeah, considering we have Jets this week, then we have home Dolphins, and then a break with the Saints, and then Patriots. So you're getting 3 division games in the first 5 weeks. You got to come out on top on all of them. It'd be nice to start 3-0 and starting in July. Starting in July, I got a new job and figured, hey, I get to go watch football again with Drew Gear. But maybe some people don't know what you're doing on Sunday for the game.
I'm going to be at the season ticket holder watch party at the stadium. So if you're going, let me know. Reach out. We'll grab a beer, say hi. We'll catch up. I'm going to take my kids to the stadium so that we can go, and it's going to be awesome. They're going to, take pictures at the 50-yard line, let the kids run around the field a little bit, tours of the locker room. You should have seen the look on my kid's face when I told him he's going to get to see Josh Allen's locker. He just, it was like, it's what I imagine happens the first time that a kid walked into his grandfather's garage and saw that like dirty centerfold from Playboy hanging up in his grandfather's workbench and was like, I feel like it was that look that my son gave me, just wide-eyed awe. And then I was like, Jack, are you all right? And he just like couldn't make words. I have to imagine it's the same emotion. Your Cindy Crawfords, your Pam Andersons,
Elle McPherson.
And if you haven't had that experience, man, because it's a formative one, God bless you. God bless you. You're a better person than me.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I've never really watched a week 2 matchup with my wife, so
oh my God,
I guess she's in for a treat. I think I'll probably have to go to the store Saturday. I don't know, maybe get some wings and put some wings on the grill.
Gotta do something.
For just me to eat.
Just you by yourself?
Just me and Aunt Jessica. She'll have 2 wings.
I'm not gonna lie,
and her son's not into eating chicken wings yet. I will figure him out.
You mean to tell me that Hoss doesn't like wings?
He doesn't like. So I understand where he's coming from because he associates wings with being hot, and he does not like hot food. And when I say he does not like hot food, that means pepper. As lowly as pepper is on the Scoville scale, like even pepper is too hot for him.
You know what that means? You got to hook him up with that Q42 KC bro.
He will probably say that's too hot.
God bless him.
He falls into Reed's category.
That is hilarious, guys. Speaking of which, like I said at the top of the show, Q42 Barbecue, our annual Grills Mafia steak competition, Q42bbq.com. Go check out the registration information. $1,000 prize for the grand champion for cooking a steak, having some drinks, and having a good time. I think it's worth it. Go check it out. And I'll see you guys on the other side of this one, Chris, because if they find a way to lose this, it'll give us a lot to chew on about what the makeup of this defense really is. If they lose, it'll be because of the defense. And it'll give us a lot to think about in terms of what the ceiling for this team is in 2025. Got to fix it. And if there's ever a time for a get-right game to really get their confidence, it's this one. Going on the road, hostile territory against an offense that just scored 30 points. Prove that last week was a fluke and that you can get your communication down. Because if you can't, it's going to be cold lotion when some of these other high-flying offenses come to town. Guys, this has been fun, but we're going to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. This has been your Rockpile Report.